I just said good evening, but not yet. Again, good evening. How's everyone doing? I will now call the April 8th, 2025 meeting of the Ben LaPine School Board of Directors into order. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate left, Directors Amy Tatum, Kina Chadwick, Cameron Fisher, Shirley Olson, Ross Tomlin. Vice Chair Carrie McDouglas is joining us virtually. Hi, Carrie. To my immediate right, Superintendent Dr. Steve Cook, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Lisa Burke, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. And I am Marcus LeGrand, Chair of the Board. And as we have students today, hi Elliot, how you doing? Elliot DeMartin and Iris Marshall. It's good to see you all again. Is the third person coming? Do you know? Okay, and they're in the hall, Dee's in the hallway, so when they come in, we'll be able to introduce them as well. In order to ensure safety and abilities for the board to focus on the business, we ask that all the audience adherence to the board meeting attendance expectations. This includes being seated and holding signs on the chin level. If there are no chairs, individuals may wait in the lobby until one is available. And thank you. And now, everyone please rise and remove your hats and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Navy's a good move.
Thanks.
We'll now move to agenda item number 3, review of the agenda. Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Chair LeGrand, just a quick note that we have added additional documentation into the consent for information portion of the agenda that answers questions that board members submitted prior to the meeting, but after receiving the board pack.
Thank you. Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda? All right, hearing there are no changes, we'll proceed with the agenda as noticed. And now we'll turn it over to Dr. Cook for district recognitions.
Thank you, Chair LeGrand. I am honored to give this month's Champion for Students Award to a valued member of the greater Ben LaPine Schools community. Could we please get Claire Gordon up here for this award? Claire serves as the facilities supervisor for Ben Parks and Recreation's Pavilion. She's a partner who has made a positive impact on our students. Claire's nomination came from Kinsey Martin, our Executive Director of Policy, Advocacy, and Equity. Here's some of what Kinsey shared. Our school district's Youth and Family Alliance supports the well-being of our LGBTQ+ students through positive practices, policies, and culture building. In Alliance conversations, Parks and Rec and Claire Gordon come up repeatedly as a community strength. In particular, the LGBTQ+ skate nights at the Pavilion, which in large part are supported by Claire, have had an immense impact on our students. They look forward to those events as a safe and welcoming place for healthy and accessible activity. Parents have reported how grateful they are for this opportunity and that their kids are happier and healthier as a result. Claire recently joined us to share more about programs and activities like skate nights and to listen to our families and students' feedback and requests. She took her own time to do this, and our group was grateful for her presence, partnership, and commitment. Clap now. No, I didn't say stand up. I just said clap. We're not done. We got more to do. All right, Ben Parks and Rec Director of Recreation, Matt Mercer. I saw Matt. Where's he at? There he is right back there. Shared the following about Claire. Claire shows up every day as a champion to create an environment where everyone feels welcomed and valued. The Skate Club is one of the many things that Claire has done to make the Pavilion feel like home. to community members who do not always feel comfortable in public spaces. Whether the LGBTQ plus community, first-generation Latino families, or introducing girls to the sport of hockey, Claire strives to provide everyone the opportunity to benefit from the wealth of opportunities offered while being their authentic selves. Nice job. Next, Ben Park and Rec assistant to the executive director, Sheila Reed, shares the following feedback from a parent whose daughter participated in one of Claire's programs called Girls Have the Edge. It's the hockey program. I loved that this was an event for girls and women, supporting and encouraging a love for the sport. My daughter was able to see other girls and women at many different ages and skill levels participating and was impressed by the turnout of the participants, their parents, coaches, and staff. All right, now let's get loud and be supportive. It's a big fan club.
I know, they're so nice.
I'm going to give you the mic in just a second. All right, Claire, in recognition of your commitment to growing the partnership between Ben Parks and Rec and Ben Lapine Schools in support of our community's LGBTQ youth, through your leadership and dedication to the LGBTQ plus skate nights, sorry, that's a lot of things, at the Pavilion, you have created a lasting impact on our students who are welcomed into a safe and healthy space for physical and social activity. At Ben Lapine Schools, we deeply appreciate your partnership and are proud to count you as one of our champion for students. All right, would you like to hear from her?
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys all for coming. As you can see, the Parks District's very supportive, and I have really wonderful coworkers. I also wanted to give a shout out. We have a few Pavilion staff here who show up and do an amazing job. Now I'm nervous. But if you work at the Pavilion, can you guys stand up real quick? These guys are the ones who are there on career night. They're the ones who do a lot of the work. So huge thank you to them. And thank you to you guys. Thank you for recognizing the importance of these spaces for all of our kids. So thank you.
Absolutely. Can we get Matt and others up here? Let's get a photo. We want to have a photo to publish. Come on up. Let's get a photo. Come on. Come on. Everybody you want up here. This is your all Parks and Rec. Come on up.
Jenny, you can come too.
Come on in. Come on in.
And the one library.
And right next. I really hope we got enough in here. I can't even be in the photo. Come on in. Come on over. Awesome. One last round of applause for Claire. Congrats. We're so proud of you. Yep. You too, Matt. All right. That's it for recognitions tonight.
Where y'all going?
Isn't that fun?
I know. The one thing this remind me of is I just came back from NSBA, and the one thing that they mentioned in the National School Board Conference was that we got to learn how to celebrate us and tell our story. So I thought that was a great opportunity to tell our story and what we do and what we're about. So that's just one of the many things that I appreciate. And that's a great segue into it's Teacher Appreciation Week. And to read a resolution for Teacher Appreciation Week is Director Amy Tatum. Thank you, Amy.
Resolution number 1987, Teacher Appreciation Week. Whereas teachers shape our future by their commitment to student success, and whereas teachers engage students from many backgrounds and experiences, And whereas teachers spend countless hours preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, and performing community service. And whereas the community recognizes and salutes our teachers for educating our children. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors for Ben Lapine Schools proclaims May 5th through 9th, 2025 to be Teacher Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors for Ben Lapine Schools strongly encourages all members of our community to join in expressing appreciation to our teachers for their dedication and devotion to their work.
Thank you, Director Amy Tatum. Appreciate you. I will now entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1987.
I make a motion to approve 1987.
Is there a second?
Second?
It has been approved by Director Chadwick and second by Director Olson. Is there any discussion? Okay. Now I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Okay, there it is. All opposed? I believe the aye has unanimously. Thank you very, very much. And now we'll hear from our Student Voice Council. Hi, Dee.
In the Student Voice Council, we have a college and career readiness subgroup, and we made a survey to get input on students' thoughts, colleges, and career resources to tackle the issue that lies within the district after analyzing the Youth Truth Survey. Ben Senior High had students do it in advisory, gathering 341 responses. Summit gathered 68. Realms gathered 54, a total of 469 responses. 370 of those were 9th and 10th graders. As for the other schools in the district, they all had below 10 responses. So what this appears to be the most effective is inserting surveys on or material like this provided by Student Voice in a more mandatory fashion, such as an advisory. Within the survey, most of the students seem to have somewhat of an idea of what they want to do with their futures, or if they're not, they're underclassmen. What does seem to be interesting is that students considering D1 to D3 sports don't know or have access to resources or adults to begin to figure out that path. There was 184 responses indicated that. Most people filling out the survey don't use their counselors or future center as a way to prepare for the future unless using or accessing required materials such as the FAFSA and recommendation letters. 263 have heard of them but don't use them for college career readiness, and the 117 use them but only for required materials. 36 have never heard of them, and for the follow-up question about that, 130 students state that if their school's resources were more accessible, they would in fact utilize them. That's for college and career readiness.
Furthermore, we have continued work in our other subcommittees, such as mental health support and bias. For the bias subcommittee, we've been working on a survey similar to that was given out for college and career readiness. What the information we want to find is what is wrong with bias lessons at the moment and how we can improve. In this, we are placing importance on the accuracy and representation present in these lessons. We've also been keeping our eyes on the fundraising policies that we have been talking about in our further meetings, in our previous meetings. And we have also kept our eyes on technology usage, with many of our students being part of the Tech Stakeholders Focus Group. What we've been finding there is that teachers and students alike want to keep the balance of educational qualities that technology can offer and the students' freedom to use these in ways that is beneficial to them without causing distraction. Across the district, we have been trying to spread the message of student voice and the importance of having an outlet for student voice. At Ben Senior High School, we are currently working on a student voice council for our school specifically.
Can you repeat that last part, please? What was that last part?
Oh.
Thanks, Dee.
At Ben Senior High School, we have been working on a student voice council specifically for our school.
Directors, do you have any questions for the Student Voice Council?
I'm curious, have you heard about other small council ideas at other schools, or is this just for Ben High that you've talked about?
So currently what's in the works is just this committee at Ben High, but this idea has been bounced around, and it's also been implemented in other school districts across Oregon. And those are kind of what we're taking our influence from.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for the information. Anyone else? Carrie? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your report. Appreciate it. And don't forget, if you have any questions about what we have on the agenda today, please make sure that you chime in or ask any questions or give you any comments. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you for all your work. Thank you so much. All right. Now we'll move to the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay. No, thank you. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We normally would go to public comment at this time, but right now we didn't have any public comment for today. So we're going to go to the consent agenda, which is agenda item number 7. So we're going to go ahead and go to that right now. Thank you, Janet. Appreciate you. We'll now make a motion to move to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It has been moved by Director Tomlin and seconded by Director Tatum. Any requests for remove anything from the consent agenda? Okay, since there are no changes to consent agenda, I call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Carrie. All opposed? I believe the ayes had it. Thank you very, very much. And now we'll turn it over to Dr. Cook, for the consent for information. Thank you, Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair LeGrand. As mentioned earlier, we have added an additional document to the consent for information. This document answers questions submitted by board members after the publishing of the board packet, but prior to this meeting. We also have a document that includes follow-up questions asked at the last board meeting regarding modified diplomas and data that was requested about Youth Truth Survey as a follow-up. We also have 3 reports for you. The annual report on executive limitation 4.4, facilities, the annual sustainability update, and the third quarter financial report. There are additionally 3 batches of policies that the district is adopting. The G policies are all related to the use of leave and are required updates due to changes in laws regarding this use of leave. I would also like to point out that we have added a new policy, GCBDC, GDBDC, that speaks specifically to safe leave. Although this practice isn't new to our district, having a specific policy for it is new. Additionally, the JG policies are the discipline policies. This particular batch includes the policies that were pulled from the JGBP, student discipline, that was in the consent agenda. And the final batch of policies are JHCD-AP and AR, medications, which include required updates due to changes in law around administration of medications to students. I would also like to remind everyone that policy IKJ-AP, artificial intelligence, the one that we presented last month, is still open for feedback. We've been getting some feedback on that and are continuing to look at and reflect upon that feedback. Additional information can be found on the policies page of the district's website if you're interested. Glad to answer any questions.
Directors, do you have any questions? Also, with the AI piece, I was able to get some information from when I was at the national meetings as well to be able to bring back to the board, because we had 2 policy workshops talking about AI and how it impacts curriculum and how it impacts many of the things that we do. So that information was given to Dr. Cook and Dr. Burke as well for them to be able to look at, to be able to work on this also. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cook. Okay. Turn it over to, sorry. And now we'll turn it over to Dean Richards, Director of Secondary Curriculum, Instruction, and Systems.
Good evening. Have a couple of curriculum pieces that we'd like to share with you tonight. Can we get the presentation up there? Thanks. So the pieces that we're going to bring forward are around science. We're going to start with our science work, middle school and high school freshman science. Then we'll move into health as our next component.
Hey, Dean, can you do me one small favor? Can you bring the mic just a little bit closer to you so we can hear you, please?
You got it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
So wait for the slides to pop up here because I think those are going to cue some of our speaking pieces. Go. Right, so if well, as I said, we're going to start with 612 science. So up here with me, you might want to turn those on. So to my right is Colleen Behrens. She is our 612 instructional coach for science. Jackson Blackburn is a science teacher from Pilot Butte. Heidi Friesen, to my left, is a teacher from Bend High, science teacher, and Ron Crawford, also for Bend High, to kind of talk through. And these folks have been part of our leadership group that we're going to talk a little bit about as we speak to our science practices.
Okay, good evening. So go to the next one,
Yep,
please.
here, I'll pass that to you.
So we started a process 3 years ago with 22 teachers from high school and middle school, looking at the ODE updates on the science standards. And as we came up to this new cycle for science adoption. With the team and with the administrators, we collaborated to come up with our vision and our core beliefs about science. You can see that they're up here. And what we focused on is our commitment to creating a strong science program that is engaging and equitable for all students, having a pathway that allows students to graduate with a strong science core, that we look at high quality instructional materials and all students have access to high quality instructional materials. We empower students to think and to wonder and to be curious and to build those skills and perseverance, critical thinking, and collaboration so that when they leave our district, they can have success in life or in college or whatever their career choice may be. I just wanted to fill you in a little bit about the next generation science standards and the standards that are the backbone of our science programs. Oregon standards are developed from the National Generation Science Standards that were actually adopted April 9th, 2013. So they've been around for a little while. These standards are a major shift in how science is taught in the classroom. It moves away from memorization of facts and more isolated labs towards students collaborating and thinking about science in different ways, the way that scientists do and engineers. The next generation science standards, as you see up there, talk about what scientists do, what scientists know, and what scientists think and how it all links together with big ideas and concepts. And you can see some examples of what falls into each of those categories. All of those come together in the science curriculum and content. So it's not just facts, it's how we do science and how we think about science. The practices spiral from K through 12 so that as students progress through school, the concepts get progressively more complex and progress with their thinking so that they have a clearer understanding of what science is and how it works by the time they leave high school and are ready to go to college or whatever career path they choose. Science is important to everything that we do, whether it's health, environment, technology, and so graduating with an understanding of the way science works as well as what it is important for all of our students. Our process started, like I said, 3 years ago. We had a team of teachers come together and look at our course pathways from 6 through 12 and take an inventory of where we are. And what we found is that every school is kind of doing their own thing. And so what we realize is that set up gaps for students' education, and also when they went off to high school, they didn't have a similar background necessarily of what they came into high school with. And so we needed to bring that together and start thinking more vertically and horizontally about what our students are doing. In response to that, we looked at best practices, we looked at instructional strategies. We looked at equity in career and college readiness and how we can put that as part of our science programs. We then started looking at what the state had on their adoption list, as well as beyond what the state had on the adoption list. And we visited with vendors. We started looking at different instructional materials. And what we decided was to try and to field test a few specific programs. At the middle school level, they decided to look at something called LabAIDs, and I'll talk about that. And at the high school level, they decided to look at something called peer physics, and we'll look at that. Chemistry and biology, we're still looking into chemistry and biology programs. I'm actually meeting with a team of teachers and vendors tomorrow, and then we're going to be hearing from some other vendors as well on that. We field tested, and now we're before you with what we came up with our field testing. So we're going to start with LabAIDs at the middle school level. So LabAIDs, our teachers found that the program was engaging and meaningful. What they wanted with their science program is to get students off the iPads and into the investigations. They wanted students to do reading and writing and thinking and collaborating around the science that they're learning. So what they wanted was to see more group work, more problem solving, and design and solutions. And so where students can communicate their thinking and talk about what they have learned about the science. LabAIDs is an issue-based, issue-oriented program. It fully integrates the next generation science standards throughout each unit, and it meets the needs of the teachers. It's also been rated as one of the top ratings with EdReports when we look at alignment with the next generation science standards, with the design of the program, the coherence, and the usability for the teachers. So we're very pleased to have that program before us. In the fall, we had 25 of our middle school teachers field test LabAIDs. All the sixth grade field tested one unit, the seventh grade a different unit, and the eighth grade a different unit. Then what they did was they reported back and were pleased with what they had found. Then we started looking at the scope and sequence and how we could design this to fit our sixth through eighth grade students. The ODE requires that middle school science is integrated science, meaning that every year students need to be exposed to earth and space science, life science, and physical science. They leave it up to the district to decide how they do that. So what we did is we looked at the units that are part of LabAIDs, and based on that and looking at student readiness and looking at the coherence of the programs and the sequence, this is what we came up with for our sixth grade. We're revisiting it again to see if there's anything we want to shift around, but right now this is where we have what students will be doing at sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. The idea is by the time they leave eighth grade and go off to high school, they have what they need to start physics and the other courses and be ready to go for high school. And when the high school teachers get these students, they'll all have that common experience and rigor that they've experienced in middle school science. LabAIDs is a program that where students are actively involved with hands-on science. They're thinking, they're collaborating, they're also looking at evidence and arguing for evidence to show how concepts are related together. The teacher, right here, it's an aerobic activity. What he's doing is he's rushing through the room, he's meeting with different groups, he's talking to the students, he's getting them to think more deeply, to talk about the science, to provide their evidence, and he's on the move all the time. It's an active classroom, it's an exciting classroom, and it's a fun classroom, and students are learning. They're making those real world connections, and it's very dynamic. So what I'm going to have you do now is listen to Jackson as he talks about his experience with LabAIDs.
Thank you, Colleen, and thanks for having me here to share some of my experiences with this awesome program that many of our phenomenal teachers have vetted, and we've practiced and we've talked about it. And as Colleen said, that one of the things that we want to do in a science classroom is not hide the practices. We want kids doing stuff. We want them up and moving and talking and working in groups of 4 or 2. And this curriculum is created with those things in mind. So students are doing things, they're analyzing data, they are the next day designing a short investigation, they're communicating that information with each other, and there are opportunities for local connections as well. With the Forces in Motion unit that I piloted, I was able to talk with our local traffic team and get them at our school to do a demonstration on the stopping distance and different factors related to being a safe driver, which is very important for our young teens, as you know. So it is very rooted in, so not only doing science, but it's rooted in phenomena. What are the real things that happen? What are societal issues, environmental issues that are real today and have local consequence? And students appreciate that through line of a story that is not just isolated concepts, but how do they relate to things that we can engage in, and we do engage in every day. So that's what I and my colleagues really appreciate about this curriculum. And the other thing that is great but also hard is there's a lot of reading and writing for students. There's a textbook for each unit with instructions and pictures and stories and questions and ways for them to design their notebook, which is very important for executive functioning skills of taking notes and reading and using that and what we learned to solve problems and identify issues. So that's a big challenge for students these days, is reading and writing a lot and repeatedly. And our phenomenal teachers are already collaborating on how to create scaffolds that are present throughout our middle schools in our district to help students in that. So we have amazing teachers, and we're already planning on how to fill the gaps for students that need them. Thank you.
And what you'll see up here are some comments from teachers in the white and students in the black writing up there. Teachers were excited about, since it comes with mini module books with each unit, and it comes with kits with each unit, it frees up the teachers to spend their time, instead of looking for materials and putting their labs together, which is a real time consuming thing for science teachers. It gives them the opportunity to spend that time on scaffolding and their science instruction, which is nice for them. One of the teachers said, after 26 years of teaching, what am I going to do with my extra time? She was just so thrilled to have those materials with her so that she didn't have to go shopping for things and to find things and to put labs together. I think Dr. Cook knows as a former science teacher. The NGSs follow a thematic storyline approach, and that also makes it more accessible for students. What we want is all students to have excitement in science. What we're going to do now is hear a little bit about the high school physics.
And at the end of our science time, we'll take a few questions, because I think that there's some pieces that connect from the middle school and into the freshman experience as we start to think about some changes that are happening within our high schools. And Heidi and Ron will be able to speak to some of this as well. So we are currently, the science experience is not sequenced across our system. So students may enter into any one of our schools and conceivably never take anything other than life science, or never take a life science, depending on the school that they are at. So starting a couple years ago, Colleen and a group of 20 high school teachers and administrators, we started looking at what sequence makes sense for us to come together around. And so we had lots of conversations through last year and into the beginning of this year, where we kind of started to land on this as our pathway for experience for students. So within the state of Oregon, there are 3 years of required sciences. There are 4 areas of science. The one that is not baked into this right now is Earth and Space Science. So we will integrate Earth and Space Science across these other areas. So the standards will be covered. They'll just be covered within this pathway. So this pathway is actually the current pathway at Caldera High School. So they currently have a physics first model. First semester, 95.5% of students passed physics in the first semester. So it's also, this pathway is something that many districts around our state are using, including our neighbors to the north, Redmond, Portland, Eugene, Gresham, Salem, Beaverton. This is the pathway that is very predominant across our state. The state doesn't, as Colleen mentioned, doesn't dictate the pathway, but it does say those the 3 years of science. So we'll integrate that Earth and Space Science piece in there as well. So the other piece that when we think about that physics, and I appreciate some of the questions that have come in around that, this is a conceptual physics, not a heavy mathematical physics. And Ron and Heidi will be able to speak to that. So this physics is really, and peer physics in particular, is designed for students to be concurrently taking algebra, which is our pathway within mathematics as well. So the curriculum is designed for the students to know the math that they will be engaging in. This is not a calculus-based heavy math physics. This is those idea of waves and forces of motion. And the other piece is that we're really feeling like we're increasing the rigor of our science program, because now we are sure that students will be leaving Ben Lapine schools with knowledge in all 4 of these areas, specifically knowing that they will be taking these classes as they move through our system. So we feel like that's an important piece for that. We are also speaking to the rigor point. Currently, we do have some schools that are running what's called a physical science, which when we, across universities within the state and beyond, don't consider that a rigorous science, and in fact, and not lab-based science. And so many of our students who have taken that, they may have taken an additional year of science, but many of the universities won't accept that course as a rigorous science course. So we will be removing physical science from the options for students as they move through this pathway. The other piece that we're working on is that the AP and the IB courses will be predominantly 11th and 12th grade courses. Currently, at this time, 96.4% of the students who are taking an AP or an IB class are juniors or seniors. So that is predominantly that. We want to have some discussion around the AP biology in place of biology. Right now, the teachers have not yet come to a full discussion on that. The AP recommends that they take an IB, or the AP recommends that a regular biology class is taken before taking AP biology. But there are some teachers who feel like it could be okay. So that's one place that we're still working on to make sure. But again, what that would mean is that AP biology would be moved to a senior class, which is predominantly where they are right now as well. It's also not uncommon for students to be doubling up in classes and being able to take some of those other AP classes. The IB classes at Bend High are all junior, senior classes at that site anyway. So, and the other question that I know came up is around FTE and the allocation of this. We did spend quite a long time working with teachers and administrators running different models of different pathways that we looked at to see what made the most sense to be able to continue to have some of these additional and elective courses. This was the pathway that made the most sense to that. We still will need to work towards that, but the way the allocation works within FTE is that's given to the high school principals, and they start to allocate those pieces as well. So that in talking with all of the high school principals, they are dedicated to keeping or increasing the number of AP courses and even IB courses at our high schools. So that is something that they are definitely thinking about and concerned for as well. So this pathway kind of will be a tiered rollout. So next year's freshmen will be in that NGSS physics class. Again, conceptual physics that will actually build pretty nicely upon that integrated piece that the middle school has. And then moving into the chemistry and biology. And as Colleen said, we're working on those curricula starting tomorrow with some field testing of those in the fall, and we'll come before you again with those curricula as we move forward. So let's go. Yep. So we'll pass this over to Heidi, and then we can talk through all of these pieces when we get done.
One of the curricula that we looked into in December when we were trying to find an NGSS physics curriculum was pure physics. And I've been trained on it a few years back, so I've taught it in a full year before. I've actually taught it maybe several times. And so I just was going to give you the overview of how the pure physics curriculum works, because it's very different. So you can see this layout, and this layout really helps explain it. The way you start with a pure physics class is you start with eliciting student ideas. So it does not start with me, sage on the stage, telling stuff. It starts with me inviting students to share their experience and their ideas around physical concepts. This looks like a lot of whiteboarding. This looks like a lot of different ways to get their ideas out. Then we collaborate on all those ideas, get them up front so that they move from being my idea to our ideas. And collectively we divorce it being from it's not it's not one person's, it's just, these are all the different possible things. From there we move to the lab, and then we're collecting evidence. And the lab is where we use, Pure Physics has really nicely laid out books, which are really helpful. The books do not have content in the books. The books have lab skills and instructions of how to move through the experiments. The experiments are tailored to be short, so that in a day, in a 72-minute period, I would be doing 1, 2, or 3 experiments at a time. The kids are working at their pace. They're writing down their own ideas in their lab notebook, responding to the prompts, and collecting the data as it instructs them. So what this looks like is, so far, what kids have done is they've shared ideas, and now they're in the lab, they're collecting stuff. So far, I haven't talked. Then we take all the ideas from the lab, and we go into consensus building time. So we come out of the lab, and we get all our ideas, again, on whiteboards. So we see, what did you get? What evidence showed up in the lab setting? From there, we respond to, let's look at the evidence and see how it compares with our initial ideas. Oh, we used to think that, but the evidence says this. What's really cool about Pure Physics is that they have this teacher guide, and the teacher guide has lists and lists of protocols. These protocols they have an initial ideas protocols, and they have consensus building protocols. And these protocols are promoting teachers as great ideas of how to hear what Dee thinks, how to hear what Iris thinks, how to consider what did they go and do over there, and how do we get Iris to talk to Dee, and how do we get them to collaborate? So it's really cool because as a teacher, I'm learning better ideas to get students to share what they think, and then to get students to build on what they saw in the lab. So then as a class, we come together with the evidence points to this. So now students have a collective idea of what the evidence says, and then we go to the scientist ideas reading. The scientist ideas reading is the other published part of Pure Physics, and these readings are perfectly tailored with the lab from that section. So it's 1 or 2 sheets of paper, it's not an overwhelming amount, and it has just enough information with the vocabulary, the scientific principles, and at this point it is directly confirming the evidence that they collected in the lab. So from here, students are saying, the evidence points to this, and scientists agree with what we saw in the lab. Again, it has not been about me telling them. So students are moving away from, I know this because my teacher told me, and they're moving toward, I know this because the evidence said, and the scientists agree. So it's really cool because I did not have students asking me for answers. I had students engaged and empowered to collect data on their own, and then they asked, after a while, by probably March or something, they start figuring out, could we get the scientist idea? I need to find out if I'm right. And they want that handout to find out if they're right. So from there, we can exit the loop, Or from there, sometimes there's not enough ideas, or there's not enough consensus. One time, and this might have been in Dee's class, I can't remember, I had a group of students say, we can't decide as a group, right? We're sitting in a big circle, and they're like 2 different ideas. And they're like, could we go collect some more data about this? And I'm like, yeah, you could do that. They go and design their own experiment over there and start running the tests again to see what the data says. And they're trying to figure it out with the scientist ideas reading. Eventually you get off the wheel and you leave and you go to the scientific principles. And that's the part where maybe I confirm some stuff with some quick notes or some sort of way to like formalize and get this down in paper. But from there, it's the students are empowered to collect the data, to analyze the data, to make sense of the data, and to argue based on evidence. There's a lot of collaboration that takes place through the whole thing. I've found a lot of success with it, and I've seen it at seniors level, and I've also seen it at the freshman level. And I did a quick data analysis yesterday, and there was no statistical difference between the success of the seniors taking it and the freshmen taking it. And statistically, and I can share you this data later if you'd like to see it, their normalized gain from beginning to end on the force concept inventory was significantly higher than what studies show teachers get when they do direct instruction. So it seems like there's a big effect here.
Yeah, so important up there. That top one on the left in the blue is me. The transition using pure physics has already made me a more effective teacher. I've been doing this for a little while. I might have had Heidi in my class. And in trying out pure physics, yeah, it's making me a better teacher. And speaking on the teacher side, this is different. It's asking me to ask students what they think. It's asking me to get their consensus. It's asking me to provide materials for them to do experiments instead of me going, hey, this is a sound wave, see? And when I first started out the unit, so I got to do, I taught a little bit last year with Heidi with juniors through the pure physics, actually a lot. I just followed what she did, and it was pretty eye-opening. But I was curious as to what this would look like with my freshmen. I teach physical science at this point in time. That's what my day for the most part does. I have one IB class, so I can see the end of it, so see the goal kind of. But the freshmen were a little bit leery at first on how to get together and share their ideas. And as they got comfortable in that setting, I got voices from kids that I hadn't heard from almost all year, unless I sit down next to them, hi, how's it going? But they were speaking up. Then when they got the data, they felt confident that, oh, the data says this. It wasn't me, it was the data says this. And it was a different feel in my classroom. Now that we're done with the pure physics, we've jumped back into the stuff that I've been doing, and I'm trying to incorporate those ideas for the rest of the year into the chemistry that we're moving on to. Can you go to the next slide, though? As somebody who's been doing this, been doing teaching for a little while, seen a lot of things come and go. I've never had a curriculum help me teach. I've had curriculum like a book that says, here, you should teach this stuff. I've had some worksheets, I've had some labs that are just piecemeal, put this together with options, maybe a little tidbits here and there if you read the teacher sections. What's different about, for me, and we'll all see this, is those protocol, I'm still learning the language. The protocols that are in there help me, like, okay, I should be looking for this kind of misconception when it comes up. And then over here, if they go in this direction, ask them this question. Yeah, it makes me a better teacher. So I've really appreciated on the peer side, which if you look on the challenging side up there where it says pure physics, lots of strengths, we talked a lot about that. It's a paradigm shift. And as we move forward, old dogs like me are gonna have to learn some new tricks. And I'm really excited to jump in the classroom and in some collaborative meetings as a group of science teachers and learn how to do this paradigm shift, get kids thinking for themselves better than what we've had in the past. And today, just another little challenge there. This is funny. So students, it might not be funny, but I mean, it was but students, I surveyed my kids, asking what they wanted to do, and then they said they wanted to do some more big labs. And so in our science meeting last Wednesday, when we all got together across district, I'd mentioned this, like, oh, we should do some big labs, and there was this one big lab with an attenuator that I thought we did that I think Heidi made it up, and where there's an attenuator is a safety vehicle that's sitting on the side of the road, a little trailer that keeps people safe if something smashes into it. And so we did this thing with the juniors. I'm like, man, that'd be really cool if I could add that. I wonder if Heidi has that. And one of the other teachers that had done some peers before, he goes, that's actually part of peers. That's their engineering practices, which I hadn't opened up that book yet. So I'm excited to see what else is in there.
Yeah. Okay, so this comes down to that professional learning and training piece. So with both lab and peer physics, we had almost all of our middle school teachers had piloted some of the lab aids. So they have a background in it. So in the spring, we have spring training. So spring training is going to be 3 days, 1 day for 6th grade teachers, 1 for 7th, and 1 for 8th. Lab aids is going to come here, and we're going to look at what they're teaching next year, really dive into the lab aids and answer some of those questions that they have and get them ready for next year. Same thing with peer. We actually are going to have 7 of our 14 possible teachers for next year for teaching peer physics are field testing it, either have or they're doing it right now. So we have half of everyone who's tried at least 1 unit in it. The rest of and everyone else will come together in May for spring training. They'll have 3 days with peer physics, of 2 days with training, 1 day with planning. Some of those teachers like to work in the summer and are excited to get started to look at it. We'll do a reconvene in August for those teachers that would like to come back together with peer and with lab aids. And then what we have planned is throughout the school year, 4 to 6 days of teachers coming together to have training again with peer or with lab aids. That's part of the adoption process with those programs. And then we have our educator networks that will be focused on the new curriculum. And we also have those PLC times where teachers want to work together. We have support from me as the instructional coach. We have some support from amazing teachers like this as well. And we recognize that this is going to be a phase-in process as teachers get more comfortable. Both programs also offer kind of a teacher leadership training as well, and we have some teachers at the middle school level that are going to be doing kind of a summer academy with that, and we're looking at with peer physics. They have a pretty intensive program for teacher leaders to be leaders in the district. Let's see, I think that's it.
Heidi was just also reminding me that that all of these materials for peer and in lab aids are in Spanish. There's audio supports and visual supports and all those other pieces that come with the curriculum as well. So maybe now, since we have this group of experts up here, before we jump into the health component, questions from anyone?
I know. Before we get into questions, I'm going to ask the students, do you have the questions first before I go to the directors? Yes, D.
So I noticed that for the NGSS science standards, it allows students to go to the 2-year IBA biology course, just taking those classes as is. Do we have planned a way to get students who would want to take a 2-year physics or chemistry course into those classes?
Yes, we have worked extensively at this issue, and we believe we have a solution. It is not on there because it's a unique pathway for Bend High, because Bend High serves the IB, offers the IB diploma, and so it's only an option for students who are pursuing any sort of IB classwork. It is specifically tailored for that situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say it sounds really cool, and as a person who's taken 3 years of biology somehow and not taken a physical science class, I'm really excited to see what this curriculum looks like for students and upcoming students, so it's really cool. Good work, guys.
Elliot, do you have any questions? All right, thank you. Directors?
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a few questions, but I'll just start with the first. With Caldera, they have not been using this curriculum, correct? It's been patterns or something else?
We had some folks field testing it, but that is not at the beginning of the year, they were using a different curriculum.
And the student, or the teacher who was doing the pilot, who was previously doing patterns, is like, I want to stay in peers. And so he's continuing on using the peer curriculum for the rest of this year.
I see.
Has switched, yeah.
It was patterns.
It
was the
moved
name,
pretty
yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
patterns.
Okay.
So it was a different curriculum to begin the year before we began the field testing. And yeah, he wanted to keep that because he was.
Okay. And I mean, there's so many things I like one about Physics First, but two, the way you were talking about engagement and kind of moving away from this rote memorization, which many of us remember from our high school science classes. I guess I want to think of like being realistic with regard to teacher shortages, or specifically with regard to physics teachers who are skilled enough to take this on. Will there be physics teachers who are jumping ready to do this for 9th grade across the district in every single high school?
I think that was actually one of the things that drew us about Peer, is Peer's the only one that offers teacher training. So if we're getting a fresh out of college biology teacher, but we need her to teach a section of physics, she gets to attend the training. She gets to have continued training on it. So this, other than, there weren't any other physics curricula that offered training like this one.
That was one of the draws, potentially?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's great. And then,
And the teacher materials that are given, I have a student teacher right now, and we were team teaching something, and he's, hasn't been doing it for a while. He's not a physics teacher at this stage in the game, but he was asking the kids this amazing question about some competing evidence. It's like, wow, where did you get that? Like, did you come up with that? It's like, no, it's in the teacher book. Oh, I should probably read that. But the materials that come with it, it helps us out on those next step questions too. And so,
well, and I love that you mentioned some of these materials are helping, these resources helping learn how to teach better rather than what to teach. Then I guess the other question that I was thinking about, do you know the percentage of students going into 9th grade who are actually taking geometry versus algebra?
I don't have that number right in front of me. It's typically a lower number. My percentage would be
15%?
single digits.
Okay.
Our typical pathway is freshmen would take Math 1, which is an algebra.
I mean, I'm thinking of schools like Summit, I'm thinking of schools like Bend High with IB, thinking of some other handfuls where they're coming in and taking geometry. How will this match for them going to Physics First?
I have students who are concurrently taking calculus, take it, and I've used the same exact curriculum with students who are concurrently learning algebra. And the curriculum does expect algebraic manipulation, but we can teach it within the curricula if students don't have that. But otherwise, this is skills that are it is algebra skills that we're expecting students to work with. Therefore, if you are beyond it, it's not like it's dumbing it down by any means. It's not simplifying it. You're still expected to use that, but we will teach it with it if their students don't have it.
Okay, and then another question just on, again, being realistic. I imagine, and you mentioned, 25, I don't know, number of admin versus teachers who are on these field, explorations, but I imagine you're hearing some pushback. Maybe everybody's got buy-in, I don't know, but the questions of rigor, the questions of, wow, change is really hard. How are you navigating that? Because there are lots of big changes, right, going on in this district. How do you make this successful?
So when we look at the teachers that have field tested this program, and we have some teachers with 25 to 30 year plus experience field testing it, as well as brand new teachers. Every teacher that has field tested this has said, I want more. And that's like all these different levels of teachers. So once they try it, they like it. They have to come to the table and try it. And so we're providing those opportunities. And I think through the spring training for those teachers that maybe haven't tried it yet,
they're going to meet people like Heidi, and they know Heidi and Ron. So they're going to be working with other teachers as well. And that support system, change is scary. But I think once they jump into this, I think this program in particular will be easier for those teachers to jump on. Because I'm honestly not hearing teachers say, I don't like this. I've had teachers say, can I do this for the rest of the year? Do you have any more of the units? Do you have the materials? So to me, that's very exciting. That's not typically something you hear with an adoption.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and as far as the licensing, I looked at every teacher's license and I looked at what the state requirements are, we're fine.
All right. So lab aids, one of my questions there on the slide, as you said, that scaffolds and differentiation are insufficient. Can you speak more to that and what you mean?
The teachers were just starting with the program and looking at the differentiation and the scaffolding. They had to search a little bit more for it. With the training that's happening in the spring, that's one of the focus from the program, is to help teachers understand the differentiation and the scaffolding for the reading and the writing. It's there. It needs to be fleshed out a little bit more for the teachers. When they're trying a brand new program, it's just a little bit overwhelming, and that was one of those pieces that got lost into it. But it gets good ratings for that, so that's one part of the training in the May.
Okay, so you'll be making sure that it can serve high-achieving students as well as students who need more support?
Yes.
So that no student will be bored in their class with it?
Yes, yes, and actually, Jackson was talking about how those kids that need extensions were pretty excited about thinking that was happening with the lab aids. Because you're grouping students together with different levels, you're having students take on different roles and helping each other through the investigations. They're all reading, they're all writing. They have ways, suggestions for having students read with each other and to help with that reading aspect of it. And then the scaffolds are part that are there, and then we'll build in more as we need them.
Okay, great. And then to move into the high school science, I'm a little bit concerned that we're only being presented physics and not chemistry and biology, given that you said this was a 3-year process. And my understanding of the process when you guys started was that you wanted to make it so that physics, chemistry, and biology had a through line. And, you know, we were told that physics first because you don't want chemistry and biology repeating things that they need for physics education, but yet you're not presenting us with curriculum that shows that physics is truly first and skipping the chemistry and the biology part. So my question is, are we tonight or next month rather voting on curriculum for chemistry and biology that we're not yet presented with, or are we really only approving 6th through 9th grade since that's the curriculum we're currently being presented with tonight?
Yeah, 6th through 9th grade. The biology curriculum won't be adopted this year. We start that process tomorrow to look at curricular tools.
Okay, but again, you know, we were told that you want science with a through line and you're adopting physics curriculum without showing what chemistry and biology might mean. So I do find that a little bit concerning given this is a 3-year process. So what happened over those 3 years that we don't have chemistry or biology being presented to us tonight?
When I think of the through line piece in particular, we have seen a curriculum that has that sort of through line all the way through, and it wasn't chosen as the curriculum to move forward.
Okay, so
Yeah,
when we're
the patterns curriculum has sort of a narrative through line, and the teachers, when they got together, chose the peers instead.
okay, so when this is presented as 6 to 12, we're really doing science adoption 6th through 9th, not 6th through 12th.
Sure.
You're going to have to bring back
Yep.
10th and 11th.
Yep.
Okay. So, okay. That also makes me have to ask the question about pathways, because it sounds like at Bend High there will be an IB pathway. And, you know, I talked to some parents at Caldera, like, what does science look like there right now? And they said, you know, freshman year physics, they can take AP physics as sophomores along with chemistry, AP chemistry junior year along with bio, and then AP bio senior year. So is there a reduction in their ability to take all AP science courses if they can't start until junior year?
Yeah, I don't think, there is no, I don't think there's AP chemistry at Caldera.
Okay,
The-
but they have the ability to take 3 years of AP Science at Caldera, or no?
Right now, what they have is AP Physics and AP Bio. Next year, they're adding AP Environmental Science.
Okay. So AP Bio for students who are on an AP track, we haven't yet decided yet, and we're not yet then voting yet on whether AP Bio will be allowed in place of the NGSS Bio junior year, correct? So that will be a later adoption?
The teachers aren't in agreement on that yet.
Right. There's a few teachers that feel like if students have a chemistry, they're ready for AP Bio. The College Board says they need chemistry and biology. So instead of going bio, AP Bio, so that's a conversation we need to have with our teachers to see their feeling about whether or not AP Bio can be taken in lieu of bio.
Okay, so we have assurances that this pathway does not diminish any student's ability to take AP coursework or reduce the number of AP courses. You're saying we don't have that assurance?
No, I'm saying I don't think it will. When I look at districts across the state that are doing a 3-year program, it's not diminishing their AP courses. And in fact, they're having a more variety of students take AP courses because they have that science background.
Okay.
And that's in those, like, the students now have had some physics and they're like, wow, physics is pretty cool. Like, versus students who don't get to ever really experience that to begin with. So they have that first year. They get to see those courses as they move through.
Okay. I will let other people ask questions. I may come back.
Carrie, being a former science teacher, do you have any questions? She's good? Okay, cool. My only question for this, and thank you, Amy, and thanks everyone for all the great questions. My question is based on I noticed the one key piece was in there was the reading and the writing was very difficult. It was a challenge for many of them. Is there something that you're looking to do to try to have pedagogy with some of the LA departments, with the language art departments to be able to work on some of those pieces? Is that an option?
Yeah, and that's some of the training that Colleen was referencing. I think it's also a great spot as we look at the new adolescent literacy framework that the state has just released, has a lot of disciplinary literacy goals in it. And so I think folding those pieces in, so that idea of disciplinary literacy is that science is written differently than language arts, or that's written differently than social studies. So teaching students to specifically how to read, write, think, and do group work within sciences and what scientists do. We could do the same thing in social studies and across our courses. So that's one place. And then Colleen can talk a little bit about the training, that spring training that's coming up, and leaning into that piece.
One of the things that we kind of found over the years with science, we've gone more towards demonstration and excitement and videos and all that, and gotten away from some of the reading and writing and sciences. So we need to bring that back in and make it more rigorous with the students. They're fighting it a little bit because science class is not always reading and writing and doing the math. So that's part of one of the things we liked about this program. And it's going to take the instructional strategies and reminding science teachers and working on specific literacy skills in science with the reading and writing.
I have a couple of questions. Oh, you're not done, Ross?
Go ahead.
First of all, I am concerned about this year's 8th graders going into that 9th grade science. That's a very different kind of process, and I love what's going on with it, but I'm very concerned about the kids really being ready for that. My second question is about if you're going to take an AP class, it's an elective. And so those AP classes, you're still in 3 years of, I think this is what you said, you're still in 3 years of required science curriculum, but you're working on whether or not the AP biology could take the place of the regular biology as a junior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same? What about the other AP classes? Do I still have to take those and use up one of my electives to get to that high-level science?
Yeah, like the AP Physics requires students to be receiving essentially Algebra 2 content. So the students wouldn't have the mathematics knowledge to take an AP physics class within the standard. They would have to be all the way through geometry and have trigonometry, essentially for knowledge of that to be able to take AP physics. And AP chemistry has a prerequisite of chemistry before they take it.
So there's no opportunity for a junior to take an AP chemistry class?
They could take an AP chemistry class because they took chemistry as a sophomore.
If it's offered at
Yeah,
their school.
If it's offered.
If it's offered at that school, yeah, and they would, and it is fairly typical to double up on that.
Okay, I think you can read what I'm getting at. We have a lot of new requirements, like the personal finance and the other requirements that are coming down. And we have a very tight math curriculum. So I'm trying to fit that together when I know there's only so many classes you can take every year. So if you really like science, but you don't want to be a scientist, but you are eligible or interested in taking an AP science class, that might keep you from another high-level class in one of the other pathways. That's my concern. It's tough enough to get kids to make those kinds of choices, along with teacher recommendations and parent support. But I do hope we continue to look at that AP piece, and we know we have kids that are ready for that ahead of time. And it's probably a small number, but if we believe every kid is likely to have the opportunity, then I really want you to think about that. How many electives would you have to give up, if you will, in other things to be able to pursue high-level science?
And can I answer that 8th grade question?
I'm
The
sorry?
8th grade question of,
Yeah.
are these
Yeah.
Ron's been teaching 9th graders physical science for quite a while, and I think. Just a few years. They're ready. I don't think that this is going to be a challenge for them and produce failures. They're ready. And I think Ron can speak to that, and Heidi as well.
Yeah, that's when I started speaking. I was curious as to, because I taught with pure physics to juniors in the past, and I was really curious about how my freshmen would do, and it took a little while. That's why I'm in the room still, and with encouragement, with being that it's a safe place to share some ideas, do some experiments, figure it out. They started thriving. They started speaking up before where they weren't doing that as much in a classroom environment. And so I think, and honestly, this is the first time I've heard the lab aids presentation as a high school teacher. I'm really excited about the lab aids because it seems like they're going to fit really nice together.
I do think they're going to fit very nicely together. My concern is implementing next fall on the 9th grade level.
I can speak to that last year I jumped in and taught pure physics to freshmen cold turkey. And I was just trying it. I just got slated with a freshman class and it was the first time. And it was not, there was not a transition for my students. If you start in September, this is how we roll in science. It was seamless. I really did not have any issues. It wasn't like there was maturity gaps. It was like, this curriculum is meant for students coming in without many skills. Like it's just meant for, not many skills, I just mean it's meant for students to come in with, you're not expecting them to have a big,
Thanks very much. I know as a teacher moving from middle school to high school, I know what that's like. So there are challenges, but good. And I do think in a couple of years, as the kids end up through lab aids at the middle school level and then go into the 9th grade program, I think it'll be very smooth. Thanks. Thanks, Heidi.
Director Tomlin?
Yeah, just regarding the selection of the specific curriculum, it sounded like half the teachers that will be teaching this have had an opportunity to work with the curriculum. What about the other half? Have they been exposed to it? Are they supportive of it?
Some of it is the high schools are still getting their staffing for next year and deciding, since it's a different course for freshmen For example, at Mountain View, they're not teaching, and Summit, they're not teaching biology to freshmen next year. They'll be teaching physical science. So there's going to be some shifting around. I'm sorry, not physical science, pure physics, sorry. So there's going to be some shifting around as who's going to be teaching that next year, and those decisions hadn't been made yet. I anticipate by spring training in May that those decisions will be made and those teachers will be part of the training.
But you're not aware of any current physics teachers that are, concerned about this particular curriculum?
I honestly have not had comments from any of the teachers that are field testing it that they have any concerns. Like I said, I've never seen field testing where they're like, can I have more, please? It's really remarkable, and I think it says a lot about the program that teachers are really jumping in, and really, it's like you just don't get that. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think they're going to pick it up and be fine. The biggest paradigm shift will be that guide on the side and learning, following those protocols so that students can have those important conversations. And that's where teachers are a little bit nervous of letting go of that control. And that's understandable. They're not going to, they have to try it. You know what I mean? It's like you don't know till you try.
Absolutely. No, that is very difficult, but
It is.
I'm excited about it because that's where I see students learn at a much higher level, is when they're collaborating with each other and they're engaged. So I'm excited about that.
And it engages so many more students.
Yep,
As
absolutely.
Heidi's research had indicated.
That's great. Thank you.
I just had one, I want to say that I think it's really exciting to see y'all light up over there talking about this stuff. That's really cool. It's great to hear you, Iris, say that like you wish you were able to experience this. And I'm also curious to hear how y'all are addressing the paradigm shift, and like what supports, are there going to be supports to help the teachers in that shift?
Having a teacher in the building that's really comfortable with it makes a huge impact. And at most of the schools, we have that. We have one school that hasn't really had anyone that is doing any of the field testing. And so that's going to take a little bit more support for that school. Times when we can bring together and use those educator networks successfully, and using the professional development successfully, where the teachers can come together and collaborate, is going to make a huge difference. Having teachers like Ron and Heidi that are always so open with their colleagues makes a huge difference. Having me go around and work with those teachers is going to make a difference. So we have some of those structures. It's just getting there and seeing how they work once we jump in.
Can I speak to that? I underwent the peer training, and I went monthly on, it was a virtual training for 2 months. And I don't know if we're going to do that as our staff or not. We're hoping to. But when I first learned, I did once a month. I was getting 2 hours of training with other teachers nationally, and that was like this for my approach. And it was continual, right? So I'd bring back, oh, this is the issue. The kids didn't talk. It was awkward. Here, I didn't know what to do. I talked at them for 25 minutes, and I wasn't supposed to. And then we would have these debriefs. So it really did shape my teaching practice, because it wasn't, here, go try it on your own. It was continual.
Awesome. Thank you.
I want to thank you for your time. Appreciate you very, very much. Thank you. We're looking forward to it. Thanks for the conversation. I'm glad we had the open dialogue. I like that, instead of just, feeling afraid to be able to talk to us. I know we have health coming up, and thank you for this. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Be safe going home, please. Yep.
Right, and so Dr. Amy Schneider is joining me. She helped to facilitate this health adoption. And in this case, we're talking 6-12. It's really 6th, 7th, and 8th, Health 1 and Health 2. So it's sort of depending. Typically, Health 1 is a freshman course. Health 2 can be a sophomore or junior course, depending on how it works. So I appreciate Amy kind of being here as we talk through pieces. So Similar kind of process as we did with science. We kind of start with these core beliefs. The core beliefs are really the way that we use to, we hold those up as the lens that we start to look for at curricular tools. So team of health teachers got together, started to look at the health pieces that we had in the core values we had in the past. How do we update those? So really leaning into this, that effective teaching and learning of health is really, it's a core foundational skill. We want to make sure that students are never going to ask when they're in a health class, when am I going to use this? Right? This is what you use every single day. It is, it's a critical piece that's going to serve them for their lifetime. We want to build skills and knowledge more, and those health skills more than just sort of dumping information into them. So we want to make sure that all students have access to really high quality instructional materials. Most of our, in middle school, most students take about a quarter of health, depending on the implementation. Sometimes that's 1 day a week, and sometimes that's for a quarter. Like 6th grade might do it second quarter, 7th grade do it second quarter as they move through the year. So, but really having those, that real world, like knowledge of health pieces, making sure that that is all medically accurate, and that we are giving teachers and students resources within that health curriculum. It's absolutely critical. And that we're, so that they, when they are done with that health course, that they understand the actions to take, not just the knowledge to have. So when we think about that effective health instruction, that really it is preventative, and you're going to hear some more about that in the next presentation as well, that Amy will also get to be a part of. So that we have that skills-based health, and that's where we have curricular tools for that, as well as some supplementary tools that we're sure that we're able to hit all of not just the health standards, but the legal pieces and the laws that are required for health. Some of those include like prevention of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, dating violence, even down to like organ donation. We have lots and lots of laws on the books that we want to make sure that our health classes cover. So we're looking at tools for that. Within the selection process, so pulled together a group of health teachers who were interested in engaging with this. We reviewed all those laws, the standards, and got those squared away. Those started in 24, 25. Within the professional learning, we do have a, so ICCL, Instructional Coach Curriculum Leader, that's a stipend position. So we have a health leader who helps lead our health teachers. He couldn't be here tonight because he had health track practice. And the middle school teacher who's going to be here is working on a play that's going to be at High Desert. You should go this weekend. It's going to be fun. And then pulling that group together during our district SIWs as well. So getting together, looking at all those policies, making sure that when we look at the tools that have been adopted by the state, and the core curriculum that we're bringing forward to you today was on the state adopted list. We wanted to make sure that we were looking through that lens of those core values to make sure that we were reaching to those. So we then looked at the options from the states. 6th through 8th had 3 options. High school had 2 options. Those 2 options were part of the 3. And then this particular curriculum was field tested, and teachers taught some lessons out of it. They didn't teach the same lessons because we wanted to get kind of a broad look across the curriculum to make sure that we did not teach the sexuality and reproductive system as part of the field test, but we did field tests within alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, and some of the nutrition pieces as well. And so then we bring the curriculum to you today. So the idea is that we would have Human Kinetics as the publisher, Live Well as the curriculum. We have both a middle school and a high school textbook. We'd work on a scope and sequence for middle school. They would use the same textbook, but hit different parts of the text as they moved through, so they weren't reading the same chapters every single time. And then doing the same within high school for Health 1 and for Health 2. And then we have supplementary material. Some of these that we have brought forward to you in past years. Look, Listen, Link has been within suicide prevention. We've also looked at Erica's Lighthouse for some field testing to see how that looks. Catch My Breath and Project Alert have been on our supplementary list in the past. The Department of Education has made some of these synthetic opioid preventions lessons that that they bring to us to teach. And then we're also looking at the Stanford Prevention Toolkit. And then within that, healthy relationships, violence prevention, sexual and reproductive health, all of those supplementary curriculums have been in use in the past. So they would be used to support the pieces within Live Well as well. So kind of questions around health was a little tighter. We didn't have the big shifts within science. So what questions do you have for the health adoption?
Amy, the supplements are probably of key importance here because those are some of the standards that are a little more challenging, I'd say, for both the kids and the teachers. Which is Erica's Lighthouse is new and is new to us. And what else?
The ODE synthetic opioid prevention and the Stanford Prevention Toolkit.
Okay.
Those three are the new ones.
And you're not sure where those are going to fit, what grade level or which course they're going to fit into?
For the opioid prevention lessons, those are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then we've placed it in Health 1 in high school, and that's per the law. It's required 6th, 7th, 8th, and then once in high school, and so we placed it in Health 1, being that reaches the most students in person. And then the second one you asked about was at Erica's Lighthouse. Erica's Lighthouse will be in 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then Health 1, and we're still negotiating Health 2. So there's some planning still to be done with the health teachers that are creating the scope and sequence and the district's Addie's Act Committee, the Suicide Prevention Committee. And so there's some talks back and forth to settle on a scope and sequence that's going to work the best for both teachers and students and health outcomes. And there was another one, was it the Stanford Prevention Toolkit?
Yeah, well, the first two were, yes, substance abuse.
And then the Stanford, so Catch My Breath will be in 6th grade, Project Alert 7th grade. Project Alert has booster lessons in 8th grade. Those are the substance use prevention for middle school. And then for high school, the Stanford Prevention Toolkit has Safety First, which is being proposed for Health 1. And then there's also a cannabis lesson that teachers are looking at putting in grade 7. And I believe there was an alcohol unit they were looking at putting into, that was a textbook, so I'm getting mixed around in my head. But that gives you an idea of where we're sorting it out, but it's still to be determined exactly where they settle.
Okay, great, thank you.
I want to circle back to our last board meeting, and I'm looking here, prevention. Where does some curriculum on bullying prevention fall in?
The benefit of having the textbook is that it has a more robust social and emotional units, and that was one of the big discussions that we had when we were sorting out what chapters and lessons are going where, particularly in middle school, where we see a lot of need for that social and emotional learning of skills, and how do we start responding that's aligned with our values and not with our emotional reactions. And so that is going to be placed in 6th grade. And we talked about using the textbook to introduce the health skills in general, and then moving straight into that social and emotional lessons in 6th grade. And so that will be some of that starts in a foundation there. And then you can see bullying prevention also in other subject areas. So for instance, healthy relationship violence prevention covers how we set boundaries and communicate, how do we understand what influences someone's behaviors and actions. And that includes just kind of being mindful that everybody has different beliefs or different practices, and learning to respect those. So it's kind of woven in multiple things. So it's not just like a named bullying prevention program.
I'll add to that, it's also woven within our social and emotional or life and career readiness component through Wayfinder. So as part of the 20 lessons within each grade level, that there is not only a lesson devoted within bullying prevention, but there's also what are they? They're called collections. So that a teacher could choose to say, "Hey, these are the things that my students are struggling with right now," and kind of open that up to have specific lessons based on the things that they are seeing within the classroom.
So it sounds like there's a level of subtle embedding in each of these. But is there actually a bullying prevention curriculum that's being tapped, or is it within each of these, with SEL and relationship building and violence prevention?
Yeah, we don't have a separate standalone bullying prevention program other than it being part of the life and career readiness, part of comprehensive sexuality education, part of just general mental health promotions, so social and emotional learning.
I find that concerning. So I think it's worth considering why there isn't something specific to other states who are utilizing lots of different, effective bullying prevention curriculums.
Thank you, Director. Students, are you good? Gus, D.
Okay, I did have a couple of questions. So if I'm correct, you said earlier that some of the curriculum sections in sexual and reproductive health and nutrition and illicit drug use had not yet been field tested or reviewed in any way?
It was just, we did not field test the reproductive and sexual health sections from a curriculum that wasn't adopted.
Okay.
The other sections were the type that were. Yeah.
Got it, thank you. And then do we plan to field test them before the curriculum is adopted?
We had teachers, maybe 10, a dozen, 12, teachers who did field test this already during in between, essentially the beginning of second semester.
Got it, I think I misheard. And then my second question is, how would this translate to the students who take online health classes? That's pretty common.
Yeah, it's really common. So one of the things that we really like about this curricula is that it has, that it can fully integrate into Canvas. So I'm also the director of the online school. So our plan is over to the summer is to remove the courses that are currently used within Stride is the vendor that delivers health curricula, to remove that and have this be the common experience, the common curricula that all students experience if it's in Health 1 or Health 2.
Thank you.
Couple other questions to kind of build off of Director Fisher's questions. You said we only had really 2 options from the states for core material. Did the other option have anything specific to bullying?
The other option was our current adoption.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Did you think of any supplements to add that might be more specific to bullying? Is that something you guys considered?
It may be a good idea for me to go through the Live Well and pull out the lessons that would be related to bullying, and I can do a review and see what are the components of an effective bullying prevention program, and then see what we have in Live Well, see what we have in the other supplements, and then look at it for Wayfinder 2 and just see how that aligns with what's recommended as far as those criteria.
Great.
Okay.
And then this is a totally random question that you'll probably roll your eyes at me for, but Dean Richards, you said it, that you're in charge of online learning. And, you know, to Shirley's point earlier about how the state has added all of these new requirements. And like, we all went to school and there were some classes that were literally you had to sit through to tick a box that you could have just read stuff online, turned a test in and been done. Have we thought about putting some of these curriculum online for students to take to check that box for like Health 1 so that students who want access to AP advanced science courses don't have to waste an in-period class with something like financial literacy that literally they could read a book, take a test, and pass the class?
So we do have some of those courses that are available. What we want to make sure is that the vendors are meeting our criteria. So, but we are in conversation with high school principals about which courses do we want to have available, sort of running a way to say, yep, this class is important. We want to take this this course here. I think the personal finance class has some real skills, and we know that students have been asking for that content over the course of years. So I don't know whether that's the one that checks the box or not, but I think that's where the administrator and the school counselors can work with the students. There are times, and I don't necessarily support that they consider Health 1 or Health 2, they should just check the box. And I think that's because, and I think we want to make health a really important class that all students take because it's something that you use every single day. So one of the things we want to be able to control, like with this curricula that will integrate seamlessly with Canvas, that's one of the things that they've promised us, that we can control that Health 1 content better than using our online vendor for that.
If I may add, I want us to linger in this is a values conversation that we're talking about right now. And this is one of those that every time we're talking about required courses and what students should learn, we wind up in a position where we're frustrated in some regards, at least some people are, it's always me, where what are being asked of students and what is being demanded of schools don't always line up. And I think that's a real challenge. And one of the things that you have from our team is a commitment to do what we can to balance those required, requisite sets of conditions while still also providing students a robust and meaningful, comprehensive opportunity to access those courses. We're doing the best we can, and I think the state is, and I'm not blaming the state, I think it is very real. I think if people say, graduates, postgraduates say, I wish I would have known more about, and then finish that sentence with 1,000 different things. And that resonates with people. And so we come back in 2 more years and we have more demands on their time. And I want us to be mindful that balancing the requirements and providing meaningful choice electives is really what we're trying to aspire to, and using tools like Ben Lapine Online, for example, as a way to provide other opportunities as a meaningful tool. But I can tell you this is the more and more we go, the harder and harder this gets to meet the demands of everybody that's pointing our direction.
Thank you. Go.
Thanks. I have a couple questions. So in regard to like, can you talk a little bit about how social emotional learning at the elementary level ties into this? Because, yeah, I'm gonna stop there.
I'm gonna leave, since I'm the secondary director, I'll have to step aside on that one, but I know you've started some of that conversation.
I can speak to the Life and Career Readiness. Wayfinder is the Life and Career Readiness curriculum that is in system-wide K through 8. And then it's working its way into high school, but each high school has a different level of way they're implementing Wayfinder. And I think that's in the works of being more system-wide. But right now we have a really clear K through 8 Wayfinder application, and that's not within the health curriculum. And then separate from that, there's the social and emotional mental health in health classes. that does a little bit more of the skills-based, which are the 7 health skills, and then applying that to specific health, like scenarios or topics.
And what are your thoughts on that? Like, what's ideal? I mean, I know that that's like a big question, but like for real, but yeah, like what is I mean, we're talking about like when we see mindful music down at Sun River, like I imagine that, you know, the other things that were mentioned were like healthy relationships, right? I know there's also curriculum around that in the elementary ages, but yeah, can you, I mean, as a doctor, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't have as much expertise in K through 5 health ed, but we do know that it's important to start 2 years before exposures. So if students in the K through 5 area are seeing modeled examples of the behaviors we don't want to have, 2 years before that is when we want to be working with them to protect them from those exposures. And so ideally, we would want to have that in K through 5, but that process is going to be starting next year. So we did the secondary health adoption this year, and we included representation from the K through 5 model or system or schools. I'm not sure what you call it, level? Level, there we are. Just to make sure that we have an awareness and thinking about what's that K through 8 continuity going to be. And then we're going to be launching at the end of this year, starting into next year, that process to pull together the elementary. But it's going to be a more robust process because it's not the same as secondary where we have health teachers and we can just pull together those health teachers as our experts on how we do this. In elementary, every elementary school is a little different on how they might teach and what kind of resources they have and what kind of training and readiness those classroom teachers might have. So there's a lot more of an on-ramp that we need for elementary.
I think one practice that we are engaged in now that in the past hasn't been really part of the calculus is that what we know is we want certain practices to be part of the fabric of the way we do business. And so in the past, we would have things like, oh, it's October, so it's anti-bullying month. And so we're going to do a lesson on bullying or 5 lessons on bullying. And now we did the bullying thing and we've moved on. We know that that practice is not adequate for what our students experience. And so we need ongoing embedded conversation. And it is like when we're talking about this is specific to the bullying thing, but if we make it very isolated, then it starts to become something that is like over here versus how does that attach to self-awareness? How does that attach to self-management? How does that attach to collaborative thinking, collaborative working together? All of these other practices that are part of, again, the fabric of what we want our students to graduate with and be able to responsibly work with our democracy, right? And so we have what is attractive about a program such as Wayfinder is that it is embedded consistently through, but it is embedded in these life and career sort of standards and mindsets and ways of being that we want students to have, part of which is how do you respond to unwanted behavior such as bullying. So we're moving toward a consistency. We're also moving toward an adaptability that is unique to certain groups of students. So when a classroom teacher is seeing, wow, these are friendship conversations that I keep having with my second graders right now, we're going to need to go to a collection and talk about and have several different lessons that are just about that topic to kind of tackle that. Meanwhile, consistently embedding the large-scale lessons. That's something that we've never experienced in the past. It was like if you were a teacher that sort of thought that was a good use of time, you engaged in that, but otherwise you didn't. So this becomes, having it as a curriculum is something that's consistent and something we can rely on. And it also is part of our fabric, not something that's over there and done to check the box.
Thank you. And then my last question is, can you talk a little bit about the inclusivity of the curriculum and how it represents, or I guess how does it also include Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ students?
That was one of our core criteria when we were reviewing curriculum. It's also a state requirement. It's a state law that it has to be, and so it wouldn't have been a program that met the state adoption if it didn't have LGBTQ+ inclusive, particularly for the sexual health curriculum. And that's really where that it's a much broader umbrella than just sex ed, but that gets into different ways of having relationships, different ways of expressing our gender, different ways of how we are find attraction or have the way we experience in the world even without attraction. So it's pretty broad encompassing and isn't necessarily specific just to sex ed. And then we looked at it further for how well does this represent our students in different identities, different abilities, different lifestyles, and making sure that students wouldn't feel excluded. We also had robust discussions about the difference between what is inclusive versus just neutral, and really aiming for things that have representation and inclusion in there and not just being like transitioning names to being like these are just gender neutral names. So we spend attention to it, and then now as we enter into the public review period, we have more opportunities for other eyes to look at the curriculum so that we can get more feedback on how people perceive the instructional materials.
Did y'all have like a good amount of engagement from student feedback? And
at this point, we had the teachers field testing, and then some of the teachers had discussions with their students and then brought that to the work group and then shared that with the work group in making their decisions. In general, I think it was one of the teachers shared like a lot of comments with it. And they said they liked it. It was skills-based, applied, a little bit more relevant for a curriculum.
And then our next phase, once it's gone to you, is to take it to some groups at schools and beyond. And Amy's going to help with some of that, which is kind of to the, and well, just the next, we will have a website just for the community to be able to, it'll go live tomorrow on our website where people can look through digital copies of all the science and the health curricula, as well as we have some available here for people to take a look at. So, but that's just the big, so we wanted, particularly with the health, take that out into the community.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate it very much. Amy, I know you, Dr. Snyder, I know you're staying. Sean, you ready? Thank you very much. Sean Reinhardt, Executive Director of Student Services, and Dr. Amy Schneider, Adolescents and School Health Supervisor, will be going over our next presentation. Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you very much, Dr. Snyder.
Good evening. It's actually going to be Dr. Schneider doing most of the talking. I'm just going to introduce and set up our review of our Healthy Schools initiative that we're now in our 4th year in. And just a review of what this partnership is about. This is a partnership between Bend Lapine Schools and Deschutes County Health. The genesis of this arose out of our successful partnership with our SROs and Bend PD, how we put in half of the money and they put in half of the money, and we created a great SRO program. One of those symbiotic relationships where they need us and we need them. And this was another example where, as we saw from this last topic that we were talking about with health curricula, there's oftentimes schools are being asked to do public health type things. And so we very much need partnership with public health. And we had partnership with Deschutes County, but it was stops and starts and it wasn't really officialized, if you will. And public health needs access to adolescents, and they need access to be able to do their work. And so this is a symbiotic relationship between us and the county doing the work. And I think it's also a pretty interesting sign that in the last couple board meetings, Amy's up here talking about all the projects that we've been doing through the Healthy Schools Initiative. It's been very good work. So this is our 4th year, and we really have the flywheel spinning. We have a lot of progress being made. All of our middle schools and high schools are implementing Healthy Schools. They all have school health improvement plans that are being acted on and being utilized. And I'm excited for you to see some preliminary data that we have. It's pretty exciting. So I'll hand it off to Dr. Schneider.
Okay, and just to let you know, I have my timer here because I don't track time inside my head, so I'm gonna watch it and make sure I don't talk too long. There's more slides, more data in the slide deck than I will probably talk about, so I'll likely get to some points and tell you where I'm gonna focus on for sharing some data, because we wanted to make sure that we spent a lot of time talking about our outcome evaluation results that we're going to be publishing in fall 2025. It's very exciting, so we wanted to make sure we spend enough time there. So that means I'll skip some of the things that we have in our annual reports that are already published. So this is a kind of mid-year, middle of the ground between our 2023 annual report, which I think Sean might have handed you copies of. And it's also linked into the executive summary for those who don't have the paper copies. And some of those data are updated in this slide because I've added in the 2024-25 data where we have it. And then the outcome data with the emergency department results is brand new. So just to get us going. I wanted to start with just the summary overall. Healthy Schools provides Ben Lapine Schools with public health staffing, expertise, and services to build your capacity to be able to reach the board goals and strategic initiatives. We have prevented emergencies related to mental and behavioral health. That's what I'm going to share with you today. And we've done that by improving linkages to care for prevention and early intervention, improving secondary health curriculum instruction, by reducing policy to practice and research to practice gaps, which we just kind of talked a little bit about with the last presentation. We've increased health communications and engagement opportunities for families, and then also improved our coordination as a system of supports for prevention and early intervention for all students. And so this is how we align with the Ben Lapine Schools board goals and the strategic initiatives. We are mostly in board goal number 3 with student, primarily student, and then some reach out to families too, but more indirectly. For student wellness, inclusion, and belonging, we're just kind of spread across all of the initiatives, largely doing Tier 1 prevention and health promotion activities alongside Tier 1 expectations, and then a lot of stakeholder engagement. And then we also support strong academic core, which you just heard about with the health instruction materials. And then we are also a part of the Life and Career Readiness initiative. We have positive youth development built into that. Healthy Schools is a part of that. So what is Healthy Schools? We are a formal cost-sharing partnership, so an agreement between Ben Lapine Schools and Deschutes County Public Health to embed our local public health staff into your schools. We have 2 of our school-based public health specialists here in the back. Didn't know I was gonna call them out if they showed up today. So Lapine is represented in the Mountain View, Realms, and Skyview. We provide our essential public health services. So we are doing what we're trained to do as public health professionals. And that largely is community engagement, assessing community health needs, informing on best practices, helping to plan as a team and get initiatives started, building our capacity, supporting implementation and evaluation and reporting, and always continuous quality improvement. And then we are doing this work to prevent youth behavioral health issues. We use the whole school, whole community, whole child approach. That's a specific model that's recommended by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and ASCD, which used to stand for something, but I think it's just ASCD now, but it's basically Administrators of Schools, I think. It's like a national organization, Administrators of Schools. And we do this work to do primary prevention to prevent behavioral health issues from ever starting. So that's reducing susceptibility to future exposures. And then also early intervention, so linking people into care before they're symptomatic, before they're clinical. I don't know why I have no thing. Okay. And here's our primary purpose is to address student health issues. And we measure our success on whether or not we can see these changes to student health issues on a population scale in real life. That's our kind of highest level of success. So these are the student health outcomes that we primarily target. Positive youth development is student competence, confidence, their connection to a caring adult, and their contribution to their community. We're working on suicide prevention and mental health promotion, substance use prevention, violence, bullying and bias prevention, sexually transmitted infections and teen pregnancy prevention, and then reducing disparities across groups by income, race and ethnicity, geography, including rurality, and sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as abilities. And we do this in our 5 program areas, which are links to care, health education, family engagement, positive and inclusive school climate. You heard about Sources of Strength last month. That's the main program that we use for that area. And then engagement in the school health improvement process. If you've ever heard of the saying, nothing for us without us, that's the idea there is we want everyone who would be involved to have representation in this process of assessing need and deciding what are we going to do together as a whole school, as a whole community to address whole child needs. And then the big idea of what we're doing is this whole school approach. So if you, I don't have a mouse to show you. Imagine I have a mouse or a laser around my little network there. So that's a system. And if you look at our logo, you can see that same little system in our logo. So everything that we do is aiming to have students at the center. And then we should have a coordinated system of supports wrapping around students that's working with effective prevention and health promotion in those 5 different program areas. So if we're addressing suicide prevention, what's the health curriculum that's being used that's effective? What are our linkages to care? Are we able to have students who are identified as potentially having risk or potentially needing support? Is there a place where we can make sure that they have a safe gateway into care? What's the family communications that we're going to be sending out to go along with that to support them at home, to give them tools? And then what's our positive and inclusive school climate? For us, that's Sources of Strength. And then how are we coordinating this as a system so that health teachers and counselors and admin, we're all on the same page and we're doing this work together, even if we're doing different things. So this is the really exciting part. We are sharing with you preliminary student health outcomes. This is a preview of our future outcome evaluation report that will be published in fall 2025. This is our primary analysis, so it's the main analysis that we are reporting. For this large analysis, we focused on suicide and mental health and substance use, particularly because we wanted to measure these outcomes in real life on a population scale, and emergency department visits were the best way that we could imagine to capture that data as a real meaningful indicator of whether this program is working. Other measures don't have as real life indicators that we can easily grab. And so we wanted to start with this. We will report other data tracking, like with Oregon Student Health Survey and Youth Truth, but we really wanted to be looking at real life measures. So the results of this analysis is that we have prevented 1 in 5 emergency department visits related to behavioral health for ages 11 to 17 living in zip codes with healthy schools. And that's the entire population of those zip codes. And for reference, about 70% of Deschutes County's population lives in a zip code with healthy schools. So this is a very large impact. Thank you. This is what we've always wanted. So just to get to the fine print, to explain a little bit more about how we did that. Over the calendar year of 2024, 84 or 21% of behavioral health related emergency department visits were prevented for the age group that we're targeting in zip codes with healthy schools, compared to Deschutes County zip codes without healthy schools. The actual number of visits for healthy school zip codes was 324, and I have a graph where I'll show this. but I'm just aiming to front load some of the information before we start looking at different lines. Compared to the expected number, which was 408, and that expected number is based on a 6-year comparison of trends between the treatment and comparison group. And behavioral health ED visits for this analysis includes any diagnostic code for suicide attempts, suicide ideation, substance use including alcohol, marijuana and drugs, depression, and mental health. So this is the graph that we have for it's called a difference in difference linear regression model. So if you look on the bottom axis, there's the 6 years of data from 2019 to 2024. And then if you look at the vertical axis, that is the total number of emergency department visits for our age group annually. Over the 6-year period, there were 6,600, did I say 6,000? 3,611 total emergency department visits for our population with those behavioral health codes, and we split them into 2 groups. So we put, we have in green the students who are, or the youth who are living in zip codes with healthy schools, and that's that solid green line. And again, about 70% of the population lives in a zip code with healthy schools. So if all things were the same, the number of visits should be a little bit more than twice as many. Because it's 70% versus 30% if all things were equal. And then we have the other group being the zip codes without healthy schools, and that serves as our comparison or our control group. The vertical line that you see there in the middle is when healthy schools intervention first started reaching students at the earliest point in time. So it's a pretty conservative time point for when we just started reaching students in just 2 high schools. And then in 2022 and 2023, we expanded out to reach the majority of high schools and middle schools. And then in this last school year before this one, 2023-24, is when we were in all middle and high schools in the school district, and we had started doing sources of strength on a pretty wide scale. Everything to the left of that vertical line is our baseline period, so it's a 3-year baseline. And then everything to the right is our intervention period, but the intervention was only in the green line. On the left side, in that baseline period, you can see that our trends were nearly exactly the same between the zip codes with healthy schools and the zip codes without. And then you can see where there's the dotted line, that is the expected number of emergency department visits we would have had if we didn't have healthy schools, based on that comparison line and those trends. So that number where it says -35, that's 35 prevented emergency department visits between what we actually had in 2023 calendar year to what was expected based on the trend in the comparison group. And then the 84 is for 2024. That's the 84 visits between what we actually had and we expected. And that 84 is what I presented to you as that 1 in 5, because that's where we are statistically and clinically significant. And we don't say statistically, obviously, because I don't say it very often. Statistically, I'll stop. I don't say that very often because we're very careful when we claim that. And so this is a very substantial result for us. So yes, thanks. And so to be mindful of time, I'm going to jump to just 2 main outcome areas that we have just to share a little bit of how we got there, because this is a population level outcome and we want to share what we've done, what effects we've seen inside Ben Lapine schools that have led us to that. So looking at our program areas, I'm just going to focus on links to care and health education. As for what we've done, and because I've already shared about sources of strength before. So in Links to Care, I wanted to share that our work with healthy schools couldn't be done without our partnership inside Ben Lapine schools. I am working under the direction of your Ben Lapine schools directors and in partnership and collaboration. And so I wanted to highlight Jennifer House's position, the Director of Social, Emotional, and Mental Wellbeing. She was hired at the same time, and you all invested your student investment account also into a whole nother area of frontline service. And so this shows the changes that have happened since before we started both of these efforts in 2021, 2022, to where they were at the end in the 2023-24 school year. So the number of schools with school counselors has increased dramatically. Nearly all of them have a school counselor. Student success programs are now in most schools. Care Solace, every single school has Care Solace, which is a single electronic closed loop referral system. If you're in healthcare, that's very exciting. And then on-campus therapists have increased to be able to provide us with the people and the services that we link to. Healthy Schools doesn't do direct service. We are doing a lot of your promotions and integrations and your connections. And so it's important that these investments are there so that we can then just link people to them, and then they get linked into more higher levels of care. For Care Solace, so Jennifer and Sean's work instituted Care Solace as that referral system. And then what Healthy Schools did is we look at your data and we start tracking and we say, I think we can do better. In 22-23 school year, we noticed that only 52% of the adolescent referrals were resulting in appointments. And so we wanted to make sure we improved that. So we started doing some campaigns to make sure families were aware of what Care Solace is, and that they knew that if they got a call from Care Solace, it's like getting a call from your school, and we need to hear back from you, even if it is to accept or decline. We learned at the same time about 41% of referrals were unreached. The parents were unreachable by Care Solace, and so those cases were kind of staying in limbo. And so over that next year, we increased the proportion of appointments resulting in, or referrals resulting in appointments by 8% points with that strategy, and reduced the proportion that went unanswered by 9% points. And then I just looked at it for this year before coming here, and we are up to 66% of adolescent referrals for this year making it to appointments. So we're still on a continuing improvement. And then the last on links to care, I want to nod to our Sources of Strength peer leaders. We have trained just under 800 Sources of Strength peer leaders since fall 2023. They have two roles. One is an agent of positive change, which we talked a little bit about last time in the bullying prevention presentation, and the other is a connector to help. They're embedded inside their social networks, and when somebody is hurting or they think they're struggling, they can connect them to a trusted adult. That's the mechanism of how this works. And these are results from our trainings last year. 91% of the students that we trained who filled out our post-training evals said they were confident in their ability to get help for themselves and get help for a struggling friend. If you're familiar with health promotion behavior change models, self-efficacy, our confidence in our ability to do a specific task, is one of the best predictors for adolescent behavior change, especially if there's a social norm along with it. And then the reason why this matters is this far right graph down here on the bottom, is that students are more likely, oops, I'm having a clicking issue. How do you go back? There we go. Students are more likely to go to a friend or a classmate for help than they are a teacher and a counselor, and that's before we had Sources of Strength. I suspect teachers and counselors will also go up after Sources of Strength, but this is the main reason why we need adult-led and student-led initiatives in schools. The last two, for health education, we've mentioned this before, but we've improved or increased the coverage of required health topics. These are required by law or policy because they're very important for public health concerns. These are all factors that relate to suicide and substance use prevention, as well as bullying prevention is as part of this. So we are at 100% now with those topic areas. And then the last one that I want to mention, this is really important for us as prevention and health promotion, and it's an important distinction, and I think an important part of why we have this program is that for health teachers and the education system, their responsibilities are for teaching the health education standards. inside the classroom setting, which is largely functional knowledge and practicing and demonstrating skills inside a classroom setting applied to relevant health issues. For prevention and health promotion and public health, we are particularly responsible for making sure that we change health behaviors in real life and health outcomes in real life. And so that's what we've brought to this partnership is what are going to be those preventative programs that are effective, that are proven to work for changing these health outcomes. And so these are largely these effective skills-based, research-backed curriculum that we've increased usage of. And so, for example, for that middle one, for using those research-backed or effective skills-based programs, we improved from 6% of teachers utilizing those programs when we first started, and that was coming out of the virtual learning after COVID, to now where we are with working on that relationship between the Addie's Act Committee, our county health department, and teachers to embed these research-backed programs into. And that's part of what we're voting on for the, or not voting on, but giving feedback on for the supplemental parts of the curriculum adoption. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Schneider. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it so much. Students, our directors, do you have any questions?
Just a quick question. I commend you. This is really terrific. So many things I'm really excited about as sources of strength, especially I've seen it in action, and that peer-to-peer and adult-to-student piece is so critical. I do have concerns about the unreachables when it comes to Care Solace. I think I have heard so much feedback of how confusing that can be, and it's just an underutilized resource. And I'm curious, is it just phone call? Is it text? Is it email? Is it WhatsApp? How are you getting these unreachables?
Is the question, what are all the different mechanisms that Care Solace uses to reach out to families?
Yeah, and also maybe, what are some of the avenues? I just hear phone calls, not getting called back type thing, but also, what are the avenues? And also, what's the plan of action? And maybe I missed this in your presentation, but what's the plan of action? Because this is one of the most concerning to me right now.
Yeah, so, typically, well, there's a couple different ways to engage with Care Solace. One way is to, anyone can individually go and do searches via, they can text, they can call, they can do a video chat with a care provider, or with a care companion, I think is what they're called, care companion. We also can do a warm handoff process where a staff member can sit with a student and their family and kind of introduce what the issue is, help them move into the intake process, and then get them initially connected. And then what's going to happen is that care provider, or the care companion, is going to engage with them at whatever level they want. Would you rather have text? Would you rather have phone call? Would you rather have emails? Typically, it's a lot of texting. And so the care companion will reach out to different providers, look for openings, and continually text and contact the parents around getting engaged with that provider and getting into that first appointment. They'll set up that first appointment, and that's sort of how the process goes. What happens is, I think, there's a variety of different reasons why parents don't re-engage with the process. I think sometimes it gets real. I think sometimes people aren't quite ready. I think when, we're sitting with staff and we're saying, do you want help? And they say, yeah, in the cold light of day when no one's there, they're really not quite ready to get that help. There's a variety of different reasons. To what Dr. Schneider was referring to in the data there is that, part of one of their linkages to care is to try to strengthen that connection around making sure that if we, make that referral, that the parents have, or whoever needs to has, the ability to respond and follow through with that appointment. And sometimes that just, maybe it doesn't happen the first or the second time. It just takes a little bit of, stick-with-itness to get the families to really engage in getting that help, because not everyone's ready for therapy. And
I get that. I guess just the yes or no piece, that you're not even getting that in response. It's just completely lack of response. And I guess I just want to make sure that there are multiple ways that parents and guardians are being reached out to, and also linguistic diversity pieces, that as well. Like it just, it's just concerning the completely unreachable, right? And just no response, right? You can be not ready or just like opt out or whatever, but what's the hold up, I guess, of just getting to that yes or no piece, which you were referring to?
I'll
Just don't know.
well, I'll just say the feedback that I've gotten is actually on the opposite end of the spectrum, where people are feeling harassed because Care Solace is reaching out so frequently and so often to them. They're like, hold on, I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm not actually that ready. So there is a lot of communication, is the feedback I've received from in my sort of in my line of work.
And maybe that's just something to consider. Maybe they're just getting too many
Exactly,
reach outs.
yes.
And maybe there's another way to do the reach out.
It may also be that their contact information that the district has in the system isn't up to date. We used to see that a lot in districts that I've worked in Arizona, and I'm imagining it's the same here. And it's why we need a system like this, because counselors could be spending all day trying to track down a family to get in contact with them, and maybe it's because their contact information has changed and it's not up to date, or there's a misplaced letter in an email or something like that. So it might be that there's other reasons why there's not reachable, just not necessarily non-responsive, but unreachable.
I'm curious if you have breakdowns by well, yeah, Two-Spirit, LGBTQIA+, and also by race.
For our emergency department data,
Yeah.
we don't have it in that database. It's limited to what we can pull out of what's called Essence, which is a national database for emergency departments. And I'm not aware right now. We can check to see if it's possible to get data by race and ethnicity. I don't believe we'll be able to get it by LGBTQ+ status, because I don't know if the hospital would have that, or if they would share that for minors, especially in the way that we can get it individualized. I'm assuming they would not share that with us.
Yeah, because of privacy issues, because HIPAA, and definitely because you weren't able to do that piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Any other questions, directors? Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much. And now we will turn it over to Dr. Burke for our presentation on the district integrated plan. Thank you, Dr. Burke.
She was taking her microphone.
I travel.
As Dr. Burke makes her way to the podium. I'm just kidding. I was saying it's making the podium. Yeah. And stretch out. Thank you, Iris.
All right, you saved the best for last, I promise. It's really a rager here. Okay. I am going to present to you a little bit about the integrated application. We talked about this actually earlier this year. So I did a report regarding what we have spent our money on, what are the things that we've done in the past couple of years. This process, this application is a 2-year process. So we are coming up on another 2 years. We look at goals and outcomes for like 4 years, but there are changes that happen along the way. So I'll speak to a little bit of those. So just to kind of orient ourselves on like why we have this process. This process originated from some input around the state regarding the way in which Oregon allowed us or expected districts to engage in grants. And so it became this like very overwhelming process where there are so many different sort of hoops that everybody needed to jump through, that the integrated plan process was created. And so what that does is it kind of links several different grants that all school districts are part of in order to potentially move toward making this a little bit easier. So there are a few components that are part of the integrated plan. One is that we have to have input from stakeholders, so I'll talk a little bit about the way in which we do that in Ben Lapine. We have to identify our initiatives, and then we have to say, here are our initiatives, here's the way in which we're going to spend this money, and we need to seek approval from the board to say, yes, that's how we want to spend our money. So much of what you will see and hear today is redundant to the budget meeting because these things go hand in hand, and this is a source of our budget. So this is kind of a graphic that represents the ways in which a lot of different pieces integrate from the state. So when we look at common goals for the way that Oregon says, here's money for y'all in your school district, here's what we expect that you spend it on. We think that we want you to have a well-rounded education. We want you to be equity advanced. We want you to engage the community. We want you to strengthen systems. So those are those common goals over on the side. As we are planning our process of how do we get to saying these are the things that we care about, these are the ways that we want to spend this money, we go through these common elements, which is an authentic engagement process, equity-based decision-making, focusing on students who've been historically marginalized, looking at the needs that we continue to have, and kind of revisiting this year after year. And then you'll notice that these are all of the programs that line up with all of these goals. So the ones that probably you are most familiar with is the student investment account, high school success, and early literacy. But there are a number of different programs within this that we receive funding from. So today I'm going to focus on primarily 3. I have budgets for 5, and those are the things that I'm asking you all to approve this evening as we go through the process. So when we look at any of these grants, all of these are state grants, and the student investment account is our biggest grant that we have from the state. Each of our grants have very specific reasons that we can ask for those funds. So for the student investment account is to meet students' mental health needs, behavioral needs, increase academic achievement, and reduce disparities for focal groups of students. High school success is related to graduation rates and college and career readiness. Early literacy success, this is related to success really in, you guessed it, early literacy. I know that was a brain buster for right now. But ultimately, what are all the things that you're doing to enhance early literacy? And then the 2 others that I'm looking at with you tonight is our early indicator intervention system. In Ben Lapine, we utilize this to pay for a portion of our Youth Truth system of surveying. So that's a way in which we engage the community broadly in how are we doing along the way. And then the other is CSI and TSI. Those refer to comprehensive support and improvement and targeted support and improvement. These are for schools who have been identified as needing specific supports. How are we going to spend those dollars related to those schools? As I started to fill in this slide, the font kept getting smaller and smaller as I added more people. But basically, the name of the game in this is that pretty much everybody in this room that has been part in some way of this planning, it is really about engaging stakeholders and saying, how are we doing with the funds that we have? Are these the things that we want to continue to have our funds support us with? Again, I will remind you that because almost all of our dollars are related to people, and the cost of people is surpassing the dollars that we are receiving, it's not like we're getting more. We're getting more dollars each year, but they are not allowing us to get more people. In fact, we are having cuts along the way. So what you're going to see in these budgets is surprise, not big changes in terms of the things that we're investing in. In some cases, there are cuts where we are investing, but we want to continue with the big rocks that we want to move that you've seen several times in our strategic initiatives this evening. The required planning process. So as I said, the planning process requires a use of an equity lens. In Ben Lapine, we have the gift of having that really solidly in place. So those are things that we care about, we consistently refer to. Similarly, our community engagement, when I meet with folks around the state who are starting the integrated guidance process, they're like, oh, what are we going to do for community engagement? And in Ben Lapine, I feel really thankful that we have built some systems that allow us to engage with our community, and we are expected to engage with our community in an ongoing way. So I'll talk a little bit about that today. That allows us to recognize some needs, recognize how we have impacted certain focal groups of students, continue on the development of a 4-year plan, although these are 2-year budgetary plans, and then review these consistently to sort of tweak and change. Here's the plan highlights. For us this year, again, we have an equity lens that we utilize in Ben Lapine, and we kind of say, we use that as we are looking at all of our strategic initiatives. This year, the artifacts that we considered were youth truth surveys, particularly though feedback from students and families. So as a reminder, youth truth also includes our employees, but we used a different artifact in order to gather that. Advisory groups, that's new this year. We have 5 different advisory groups for 5 different employee groups, so we've utilized that. The Equity Coalition and Student Voice Council, we continue to kind of review the things that they engage in. So as Elliot shared earlier, the things that we've engaged in or these groups are interested in engaging in continue to be college and career readiness, mental health issues, bias. So we are on the right track when we continue down those paths. Mentorship experiences. This is specific to focal groups of our newest staff members. So newest staff members related to both teaching and administration. So we took in information that we heard from them. And then we just have an ongoing data review that we are always looking at our outcomes in Ben Lapine. So as far as what we learned from all of these, basically we noticed that belonging and having strong relationships is something that continues to increase in Ben Lapine. So in our Youth Truth surveys, really across the board, we saw a lot of great growth. Where we see growth, that is awesome. It does not mean we are done. We have a lot of other areas that, and even continue in those areas that we need to continue to beef up. So again, we are on the right track. Our needs continue to be mental health support for students and families. And what is similar to that is staffing for those high needs in schools. So students who are demonstrating high disruptive behavior, students who are demonstrating high needs of mental health supports. Those are things that we need to staff for in different ways. Clarity and communication and having families know how their child is doing academically in school is an area that we can continue to grow in. And our system, basically in all areas, is consistently saying, please don't give us more new initiatives. We have to have focused and fewer initiatives. And so we want to kind of move forward with that in mind. Our plan is really, the importance of this slide is to recognize that while I'm presenting with you today and in these budgets, like, here's our very best thinking, please know that every quarter there are changes and tweaks along the way. And so right now I'm presenting this very best thinking, knowing that we don't have federal certainty, we don't have state certainty, and we are bargaining with both of our unions right now. So the idea that these are solid is far from that. Additionally, I think, just as an example, for CSI, TSI, this is a good example. I'm coming to you as a board to say, hey, please approve this budget for CSI, TSI schools and how we will spend that money. We do not find out what our CSI, TSI schools are until November. And then we would be planning with those schools to determine what's going to be supportive. So this process, although required by the state, has a lot of, we've got some question marks along the way there. These are just pointing to the ways in which the state will be monitoring our success. And when we talk about longitudinal performance growth targets, these are the areas, these are not new for any of you. These are how our state measures success for Ben Lapine or any district. So 3rd grade reading, 9th grade on track, 4 and 5 year completion rates and regular attendance. So this is really the stage that we're in. We're in this little sunshine spot over here. We are here. So although you are approving things tonight, or I'm hoping that you will approve things this evening, this really allows us to begin a process. So this is not saying we are done with a process. This is saying that we've put in energy to start this process. And you all, by voting that you would approve, are saying, yeah, we're okay with the direction that this is headed, and know that there will be tweaks along the way. I will continue to be presenting to the board about where we are with all of our budgetary pieces as they become more clear. So that is the presentation on the integrated guidance.
Thank you, Dr. Berger. Appreciate it. Directors, have any questions before we go to a vote and discussion?
Yeah, Lisa, I was just curious about Perkins. How much money do we get from Perkins? Are we part of a consortium that includes the college? How's that work?
Yes, so actually, other people can probably speak to this more directly, but Perkins grants are part of it really happens with high school and our CTE programs. We are involved in that. A lot of the work that is related to when we receive those funds, that is primarily held with Brooke Rich, who works with us from the ESD. So Brooke will say, hey, you are eligible for X, Y, and Z, and then we're able to apply to those. Typically, again, they are handled a little bit less internally to us. We engage in that, and we sort of deliver on some outcomes related to that. But when we know if they've been approved or if we can move in that direction, that comes from our work with partnership with the ESD. Anything that you would add, Katie, related to Perkins? Yeah, I would just what you said, right? Oh, please hold. You need to be on mic. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, now I'm green. Basically Brooke, who is our coordinator at the High Desert ESD for the whole region, she basically gets all the money from Perkins, and she has a committee set up to allocate the resources, and she rotates programs of study every year. So each year there's maybe 3 or 4 programs that she's planning on funding. Our CTE coordinator, or TOSA, who is Lisa, who you've met at a previous presentation earlier this year, she's the one who works with Dean and myself to determine what are those allocations that we'll be asking for based on what program they're funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, directors? All right, thank you. Now I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move to approve the district's integrated plan as presented.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Tatum and second by Director, what's her name? Fisher. No. Any discussion? All right. I will now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now we'll move to the ESD Board of Directors vacancy. In June 2021, the Ben Lapine Board elected Carlos Perez to represent Ben Lapine Schools in the High Desert ESD Service District Board. Carlos has been a very engaged board member over the past 4 years and has served as the vice chair for the past 2 years. Carlos' term ends on June 30th, 2025. That's a good day. Carlos has expressed interest in serving another 4-year term on the High Desert Board. The new term will run from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2029. I will now entertain a motion.
I move to elect Carlos Perez to represent Ben Lapine Schools as a Ben Lapine representative on the High Desert Education Service District Board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been motioned by Director Tatum and seconded by Director Tomlin. Any discussion? All right, and I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I believe the ayes have it. Thank you very much. And now we'll turn it over to Superintendent or Dr. Cook for his superintendent report.
Thank you, Chair LeGrand. I have 4 items I'd like to report on. Pretty short presentation. First off, I just want to, it's been mentioned a couple of times, just want to remind folks that we're in bargaining with both of our units, and I want to thank our board members for participating in those. Ross is representing the board in the bargaining with the BEA unit, and Director, my gosh, it is so late. Thank you. Director Fisher is representing the board with the bargaining going on with the classified unit, and I want to thank you both for that time commitment. I know it is a lot. We are hopeful that we can have that tied up and hopefully done before the end of school. I'm going to say that as a predictive and keep my fingers crossed if we can get the state to give us some feedback on where we're going to go financially. The second one is just a quick shout out for a wonderful second year of the Ben Lapine Schools Life and Career Readiness Fair at Caldera High School. That was on March 12th. Tremendous turnout. My goodness, so many people came to that. And that thing is becoming quickly getting a life of its own, and multiple vendors there sharing their experiences with our students. Lots and lots of interest. On the following day, on the 13th of March, we did 2 all-staff, virtually all-staff meetings, and had over 500 participants in that process. I'm very excited about that. It was a little bigger of a lift than we anticipated technologically, and we did get some glitches that we are working out for people to get access to it through Teams. But generally, the feedback was very positive that this felt like a really productive way to get information out in a quick fashion. And if you recall, that was the time of year when there were lots of questions about quite a few things. And so we had an opportunity to do I did about a 15-minute, like, here's some things to be mindful of. And then we just opened it up for Q&A, and that was really well received. And then I think just the last thing I want to share about is the legislative session right now. We're getting into mid-April right now, which means things have to move pretty quickly. Yesterday I testified on a House bill that was brought before the Judiciary Committee by Representative Levy and Senator Broadman regarding it's House Bill 3839 regarding access for school districts to gain more information regarding sex offenders in our region. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be an interesting dialogue. There's a short runway on this. I'm very hopeful, but we'll see how this goes. If you recall, this goes all the way back to 2022 for us at the event at High Desert Middle School. This is the singular item on the findings. Remember we had an audit that we performed on this. This is the only thing that we have not addressed that was a finding in that audit. And so really, well, first of all, I'm extremely grateful for Representative Emerson Levy's partnership on this, her advocacy on this, and continued willingness to stand in front of people and take on a really challenging conversation. Glad to welcome Senator Broadman also to that conversation. And then secondly,
Steve,
yes.
I was surprised on OSBA's response.
I am too, and we'll work through that. There's some
she
things
didn't
that
get
are,
it all.
I'm hopeful that they were just not prepared and that there's going to be more dialogue. I really feel like this is we don't throw in on things that we don't believe are controversial, and we feel like this is the right thing to do for our families and students. We have follow-up interviews with media coming up later this week to get more detail. And then just connecting a part of some of the longitudinal data that we're being asked to perform on the integrated planning, I think is going to become the foundational pieces of an accountability bill that's coming out of the legislative session. I don't expect this to become wildly unmanageable, but I do expect there to be some pretty formal language coming out of this legislative round for school districts to have some data that they're performing in a more public fashion, reporting in a more public fashion, potentially having some dashboard on it. I'm not going to editorials on this now. We are deeply engaged in those conversations, but I do want to put it on your radar. It's in our future. How far I will go to say and see how well it will impact student outcomes and student learning is another conversation for another day. Glad to take any questions if you have any.
Directors have any questions? All right. And now I would turn it over to our directors for the director's comments, and I will start with Carrie, who's online. Director Douglas? Okay, she has no comments?
tonight. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Director Tomlin?
Thank you, Chair LeGrand. Well, I just continue to appreciate the presentations that we have in our meetings every month. I continue to learn so much at each meeting, which I have a large learning curve ahead of me. But what I'm seeing is just some really excellent work being done across the district for all our students. So very much appreciated. And then tomorrow I get to go to Lapine High School and meet with their forestry instructor, Cameron Salvatelli. He's a great guy doing good work at the high school there, and I've been working with them and their forestry team to prepare for the state competition. I think last year they were second in the state. So they do good work there, but I get to work with them on timber cruising, so that'll be fun. So.
Thank you. Director Olson?
Just a comment that appreciate everybody's time, so please pass that on to everybody that spent a lot of time with us. And I do have one request. It would be nice to also have a principal once in a while with these curriculum presentations. We know they're involved, but they're the ones that really make it happen, especially when there's changes. And you talked a little bit about, student forecasting and staffing arrangements, and it's a great puzzle. But it would have been helpful maybe to have a couple of principals speak to some of the curriculum issues also.
Thank you, Director Olson. Director Fisher?
Yeah, I want to just express appreciation for the sustainability update and the addition with Madeline Paquette, if I'm pronouncing her name right. I think that's really helpful, and I'm also really looking forward to adding more schools at the elementary level for composting and reuse beyond Bear Creek and I can't remember the other school, but Amity, and really moving a little bit faster on that, as well as secondary. Looking forward to that for fall. And then also I wanted to express appreciation for the district adding multiple engagement dates for the Hang Up and Drive and utilizing free resources through ODOT. And I think it's really valuable considering what we've seen in the last few years with our student population and the dangers of various device use while driving. So I'm looking forward to that too. Thank you.
Yes. Deutsch.
Yeah, I just want to echo all the presentations that were given tonight, especially from Deschutes County. I think I've shared this before, but it really is beautiful when I see different parts of our community coming together, especially for our youth. I had a great visit with the GSA Stonewall group at Bend High and just getting their thoughts and really just checking in with them. And then last Friday attended the Oregon Legislative Assembly at Warm Springs, which was the first time in history that was conducted on a reservation. And yeah, it was really beautiful. Gym was packed, and just hearing again from the community. And a lot of that was support, especially mental health for our students.
Dr. Tatum?
I just want to share, Carrie and I both got to attend the first work group for the technology group that was formed. And it was an interesting mix of administrators, classroom teachers, parents, students, and it was interesting to explore kind of different ideas about technology, how we're using technology, maybe how we should think about using technology. But one of the things that struck in my mind after that I've been thinking about a lot as a board director that I think we need to consider is how the use of technology has potentially led to decreases in student attendance, particularly at middle and high school with the use of Canvas, and how the expectation now for parents in the community is that everything is posted on Canvas. And an administrator commented when they had a teacher who did not want to post on Canvas, they just got call after call after call about that. And so I think that's work in the future for us to think about as we have to deal with getting kids back in the classroom and engaging them. And that issue obviously is not a monolith. There are many reasons to it, but I think we need to start having that conversation in the future. And then I got to go on a 5th grade field trip last Friday to the Bend wastewater sewage treatment plant, which is fascinating to watch all of the students get a plastic disc and throw it in the large bins of sewage to make a wish is just something that you have to be there to experience. Thank you.
So you basically are saying relationship building is key to making sure the students do their work.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I know we had a long meeting, but I'm glad we were able to get to these points because this is what happens when we start getting closer to the end of the year. We get to see the results of all the work that we've been doing, so I appreciate it. I want to thank everyone. The one thing I really loved tonight was the one teacher from Ben High who talks about he's learning more things. The thing I always like to tell people is that when did you stop being a student? Right, exactly. So I'm love that people are inquisitive and having the willingness to want to continue to learn and want to continue to interact with our students. I had the pleasure of OSBA as well as the district allowed me to be able to have the opportunity to go to the National School Board Conference in Atlanta. I just got back on Sunday. It was phenomenal. It was great to be able to be in the room with other people who are decision makers from the districts across the country. To be able to talk about the concerns of funding is one of the critical things that came up. Also, a lot of people talked about changing the philosophy in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think tonight we saw that with diverse ideas, with equitable outcomes, guess what? Inclusion does matter. So, we definitely can say something tonight, but I'm not going to do that. Anyway. Finally, two things I want to talk about from the National School Board Conference that really, really resonated with me, and I think it's really, really critical, and I think we all should know about this. The one speaker I had, he is from Wisconsin. He's from a small district, about 800 students, is K through 12, and he said something that really, really resonated with me and I love. He says, intention, connection, and direction is the way we have to look at how we look at education and how we can continue to make sure the students are getting what they need. But one of the most critical pieces is there's the difference between perceived journey and actual journey. Because when we look at a perceived journey, just because you went to school doesn't mean that you know what's happening in schools. And that was one of the critical pieces I think that sometimes we forget. But the last thing that I love what he said too that allows me to be able to continue to do this work is this. We got to change the way we talk about us. Because we never like to brag about the good things, and we got to see the good things tonight. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for your time. And we got to continue to tell our story about us. Our next meeting is a work session scheduled for April 22nd, and our next regular business meeting is scheduled for May 13th, 2025. With that being said, this meeting is adjourned.